This smells so good. If you've ever wanted to bake a European style rye bread, this is my sourdough rye bread. It's based on my memories as a child growing up in the Czech Republic. I'm not from there, but my family lived there for 4 years when I was 8 to 12 years old, and I have such good memories of this bread sliced with some butter on it, a little bit of salami. This was the bread of my childhood. I love it. I think you're gonna love it too. I'm Amy from amybakesbread.com. Let's make this sourdough rye bread together. I was in bed and I totally forgot I wanted to make this sourdough rye bread tomorrow morning. And so I printed out the recipe for my sourdough rye bread, and I'm gonna be making the levain right now, okay? The levain, it's the first part in this recipe, and it's basically a power feed. In this recipe specifically, I also use a rye flour, so I'm using rye in my levain. Just gives it a little bit of extra flavor, a little extra depth to the recipe, and my sourdough starter really loves the rye. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up my levain. You could substitute regular active sourdough starter if you prefer in this recipe instead, but we're gonna make the levain so you can see the method. And I like using a little bit of rye in there too, because this is a rye loaf. Okay, we're only gonna start with 10 grams of our active sourdough starter. That is not very much, but we're making this. I'm gonna go to sleep, I'm gonna wake up in the morning, and it's gonna be ready for me to go. So I don't need as much starter because it's gonna take longer for this to rise and peak and be ready for me to use. Then we're gonna add in our water, 100 grams of water. You want this to be probably like 76 or so. Mix it up together, and then we're gonna add 50 grams of bread flour and 50 grams of water. Not water, you guys, I need to go to bed. 50 grams of bread flour, 50 grams of rye flour. Here, I'm gonna start with my rye here. 50 grams. And 50 grams of bread flour. This loaf is honestly so delicious. I grew up eating a similar bread in the Czech Republic when I was a kid. My family lived there for 4 years. I'm not Czech, but I love the country, the memories, all of the people were wonderful. And so I knew that I wanted to make a loaf that would bring me back there, and this rye loaf 100% does. It's so good. So the thought of it pulled me out of bed tonight so that I could mix up this levain. All right, got a nice pancake batter consistency. I'm gonna cover this and set it in a warm place, maybe my bread proofer, which is behind me over there, along with all of the dishes that still need to be done in my kitchen tonight. It'll happen eventually. Cover this up, and we're gonna set it in a warm place, and I will come back at you tomorrow more refreshed and rested than I am right now. My levain is ready, it's active. It has been fed overnight and is ready for me to mix up my dough. I printed out a copy of my recipe. This is my sourdough rye bread. You can find it on amybakesbread.com. Go grab it and let's make this together. We're gonna start by taking our ripe, bubbly, active levain. It's this half rye, half bread flour or all-purpose flour. Either one works. And it smells good. We're gonna dump it into our bowl. Now a levain, you use up all of it. So it should be about 200 grams, I think. 200 grams, yes. So it should be right about 200 grams. So you're gonna use up all that 200 grams. If you have any left over, you could add that to your discard jar if you wanted to. You could even refeed it if you wanted to kind of create more, but typically you use it all up, it goes all into the bowl. Next, we're gonna add in our water. You'll notice I am using a kitchen scale. I love to use a scale for my sourdough recipes. I highly recommend it. So we're adding in our water. This is a loud bowl. I like to use warmer water, around 78, 80 degree water. It's just gonna bring that temperature of my dough up a little bit so that it's gonna rise and ferment within that 76, 80 degree range. That's perfect for wild yeast and bacteria. We're doing 650 grams of total water. Now that may seem like a little bit lower hydration than you may be used to if you've made one of my classic sourdough loaves. This bread is based off of a recipe that I grew up eating when my family, we lived in the Czech Republic when I was a kid. We lived there for 4 years. My dad was working over there, and so we were all there, and I would go to our local Potravini, just like this little neighborhood grocery store, and they would have the most incredible rye bread there, and I would get it and just eat it slathered with unsalted butter because that's my favorite. My mom would make this like salami and butter sandwiches and put them in our lunch to take to school. So this bread holds lots of memories for me, and it's not a super airy crumb bread. It's a little bit more dense, but not in a bad way dense. Closed crumb, I guess, is a better way to say it. And part of that is because it has the rye flour in it, and rye doesn't get as big of a rise like a bread flour would. It also has whole wheat flour in it. So it's gonna have these good flours in it in addition to bread flour that make it taste really good, but it doesn't need as much water. Okay, I've got that all mixed up together. We're gonna add in our flours. So we're gonna start with our rye flour. I buy this from my local mill. I also have rye berries and I freshly mill them sometimes. So either one works, and any kind of rye flour that you want to get will work. Rye is also one of those flours that is super, it loves sourdough starter, okay? Sourdough starter and rye flour have a beautiful relationship together. So as soon as that rye flour hits the sourdough starter, it wants to consume the microorganisms that are on it, okay? It loves it, and so it will ferment much faster. So you wanna watch for that as you're making this loaf. It may follow a faster timeline than you're used to with a classic sourdough loaf. I added a little too much rye flour, so I'm just pulling some of it out from the top of my bowl here. So we've got 200 grams of rye in there, and then we're gonna do 200 grams of whole wheat. Now this is a freshly milled whole wheat that I milled a little bit ago, and I'm just gonna add this right into my bowl. Then we're gonna do 600 grams of bread flour. We also need to add in some salt. So we're gonna add our salt. And then this is the thing that makes this really taste to me like a true classic rye bread that I grew up eating from the Czech Republic is caraway seeds. So I'm gonna add those right in. You could probably crush them up. These ones you can see are just like these little seed, and it adds such delicious flavor. I love it. So I'm gonna add about 10 grams of that right into this bread. Just smelling this, it brings me back. All right, we're gonna mix this all together. Now this may be a little bit different just because you're using these whole wheat and rye flours, so it's going to feel a little bit different. It's going to feel a little bit of a stiffer dough. If you wanted to add a little bit more water, you could, but that's not really the way that this recipe was formatted to be. This is my recipe based on the things that I remember as a kid. So, but you want to, I always recommend to take the recipes and make them your own. And so if you wanted to add more water to this, you could. I would not recommend making this a 100% rye loaf. Rye has, you know, its own special properties, and it doesn't rise quite the same way. So that's why I like adding in that bread flour in here as well. So we've got our, just finishing this up, making sure that all that flour gets hydrated. And yes, it is a little bit of a stiffer loaf than a traditional sourdough loaf would be. But it's still relatively sticky. So you can see it's still pretty sticky. It's going to strengthen as we let it rest and as we do our folds. So we're gonna cover this up, keep it warm about 78 degrees, and then in 30 minutes, we're gonna come back and do our first set of folds. All right, it has been about 30 minutes. We're gonna do our first set of folds. Reach in, pull up, and fold over. Now remember, this dough is not as sticky, I guess. It's a lower hydration dough than you may be used to working with. So you might think, oh, this doesn't feel as loose, and it won't be as loose because it is this little bit of a lower hydration dough. But if it does stick to you a little bit, you can use water on your hands to help. That just means that your dough is not going to be quite as stretchy when you're going to do your folds. But you still want to do the folds. Still want to make sure, I'm just making sure that I got everything mixed in initially in this first round of stretch and folds. Okay, we're gonna come back, gonna cover it up, and we'll come back in 30 minutes and fold it again. It's been another 30 minutes. We're gonna come in and do some more folds. See how this dough spreads out? That's what we're kind of looking for. And yes, it's not gonna stretch quite as much. Get your hand wet. It'll make this a little bit easier. I guess it still stretches, it just doesn't feel quite as loose as a dough with more water would feel. Okay, we'll come back in 30 minutes. We are on our third set of folds. This dough really is becoming more strong, more cohesive as we go. This is our last set of stretch and folds. Then we're going to just cover the dough and let it rest in a warm, about 78-degree spot for about 2 hours. All right, it has been another couple of hours. Look how this dough has really filled out this bowl. We're gonna go ahead and shape it into 2 loaves. Now this is gonna feel a little bit different than your traditional sourdough loaf. You're used to making a classic artisan loaf. It's just a little bit different with that rye flour and the whole wheat flour in there. I feel like it feels maybe a little softer, but also kind of stickier in a way too. Maybe because it's also not that high hydration. So use water on your hands if you need to. We're gonna shape these into 2 loaves, and we're just gonna shape them right away. No bench rest here. This is a rustic style rye bread. loaf, we're just gonna go ahead and do a quick little shape. And then this one too. And then I'm just gonna put them in these bowls right here. You could use a banneton if you want to, but also just a kitchen bowl works as well. We're gonna let these rise, continue to rise at room temperature for about 2 hours, and then we're gonna bake them. So this is a pretty quick recipe. You could stick this dough in the fridge if you wanted to, and let it rest and long ferment overnight as well. I like to put a hairnet in my bowl, and then I'm going to flour it just because I'm doing a room temperature rise here. And so I don't want this to stick to my bowl. And we're just gonna plop it right in here. We'll cover it up. And I'm gonna do the other one. We'll let this rise a little bit longer. Whoops, I forgot to flour that. Flour it really quick. I don't want it to stick. And then into the bowl we go. I'm so excited for these loaves. All right, cover them up. We're good to go. We're gonna let them rise. I have my bowls right here. I've already scored my first loaf over here. This is my second loaf. I have 2 Dutch ovens in the oven. Just plopping this out onto a piece of parchment. I use a bread lom to score. I'm just gonna do a simple X score here, and then we're gonna put it in the Dutch oven to bake. I do have in the recipe card also a method, if you don't have a Dutch oven, for how you could bake this. All right, they're gonna go in the Dutch ovens. First loaf is going in. Second loaf going in. Now I'm gonna turn the oven temperature down. It's at 500 right now. We're gonna turn it to 450. We're gonna set our timer for 25 minutes. Then we'll take the lid off and bake for another about 20 minutes. 25 minutes are up. Moment of truth. Beautiful. Loaf number 2. That's gorgeous. It smells so good too. It's going back in for another 20 minutes. All done. Looks beautiful. We have these beautiful loaves of rye bread. This recipe makes 2 incredible loaves. I'm gonna go ahead and slice one up. Look at that. Okay, this is just gorgeous. It smells so good. The caraway in here, I am smelling it and I love it. That just brings back so many memories to me. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of butter on here. I don't have salami, or else I'd add salami, as that feels so nostalgic, but I'm gonna add a little bit of cheese. We'll taste this. A little bit of unsalted butter. You could do this with salted butter, of course, or a little sprinkle of flaky sea salt. A little bit of cheese right on top. Oh my goodness. This takes me back. That caraway, one of my favorite additions. If you don't like that flavor, just leave it out, but so good. highly, highly recommend you make this sourdough rye bread. Grab the recipe on my website, amybakesbread.com. Let me know in the comments if you've made it and if you loved it.